His fingers moved slowly over the spreadsheet, but I couldn't concentrate on the figures. There was something mesmerizing about the way he worked. Confident, composed, each motion deliberate. Grant had handled our financials for 3 years, yet tonight didn't feel like just another meeting. The office was deserted, the two of us alone, surrounded by a tension so palpable it felt electric. When he noticed my gaze lingering and glanced up, a sly smile touched his lips. "These numbers tell quite the story," he said in a hushed tone that stirred something deep inside me. I leaned in, pretending to analyze the data on screen, but I wasn't thinking about figures. I was aware of the subtle mix of his cologne and the warm air of the late evening. I noticed the way his shoulder brushed mine whenever he reached across the desk. Every small contact sent a current through me. Before we dive deeper, do me a quick favor, like this video and subscribe. It's completely free and just takes a second. It helps more than you realize, and you'll never miss another story. Now let's continue. The quarterly reports were laid out across Grant's dark wooden desk like constellations made of data, but I was barely noticing them anymore. What caught my attention was how he had rolled his sleeves up, exposing strong, tan forearms. How his jet-black hair gleamed under the desk lamp. How his eyes had been drifting to me throughout the evening while we reviewed my husband's business accounts. "Mrs. Taylor," he said, that husky rasp in his voice making my stomach flutter again, "we might have a few inconsistencies to address." I shifted in my chair, slowly crossing my legs, noting how his eyes trailed the movement. "What kind of inconsistencies?" I asked. "The kind that require a delicate touch," he replied, tapping a line on the spreadsheet. But his eyes weren't on the screen, they were locked on me. Some things shouldn't be rushed. They need patience, the right attention. The double meaning in his words wasn't lost on either of us. The space between us had been charged all evening. Each casual brush of fingers while passing papers, each shared glance. My marriage had started to feel like one of those balance sheets, calculated, steady, but utterly devoid of passion. "Maybe you could walk me through it," I said, rising and circling the desk to stand beside him. "I want to see exactly what you're seeing." He turned in his chair, now facing me directly. I found myself standing between his legs, close enough to feel the heat from his body. His eyes, flecked with gold, studied me with quiet intensity. "Taylor," he whispered, and just hearing my name from his lips sent a shiver down my spine. "The books can wait," I murmured, brushing my fingers along his cheek. "Don't you think?" He didn't hesitate, his arms wrapped around my waist, guiding me onto his lap. The kiss that followed stripped away every layer of restraint. It was urgent, hungry, born of weeks of lingering tension. His hands moved to the hem of my blouse, fingertips grazing the skin of my lower back. I arched toward him, awakening in a way I hadn't felt in months. Each touch was intentional, each kiss like a carefully measured equation of desire. My body responded instinctively, as if his hands had memorized the blueprint of my needs. "We shouldn't," I breathed into his neck, even though I pressed myself closer. "Say the word and I'll stop," he said softly, his lips brushing along my collarbone. But I didn't. Instead, I reached for the buttons of his shirt. My fingers trembled as I worked them open, revealing smooth skin and firm muscle beneath. He groaned quietly as my hands moved across his chest, the sound reverberating through me. The world outside faded. The city lights glowing through the windows, the scattered financial reports, they all disappeared, leaving only the rising heat between us. His hand slid behind me, finding the zipper of my skirt and pulling it down with a quiet rasp. The sound seemed louder than it should have in the stillness of the room. "You're incredible," he whispered, voice low and full of awe. His touch was reverent, mapping every inch of me with the same care he gave his spreadsheets. I stood just long enough to let the skirt fall to the floor, then ease myself back onto his lap. I could feel his arousal through the thin fabric between us, and the friction made me gasp, my head tilting back in surrender. His lips traveled along my throat while his hands worked at my bra clasp. Once it slipped free, he simply looked at me, eyes darkened with appreciation, silent for a moment. "Beautiful," he murmured, lowering his head and worshipping my skin with lips and tongue. Every movement sent sparks through me, tension spiraling higher, needing release. My fingers found the buckle of his belt, then the button and zipper. He lifted his hips slightly, helping me slide the material down. In that moment, there was nothing left but breath, heat, and the electric space between our bodies. "Are you sure?" he asked, resting his forehead against mine, offering one final chance to walk away. I didn't answer. I simply guided myself onto him, eyes locked with his, taking him in slowly, deliberately. The sensation was overwhelming. The stretch, the depth, the way he seemed to fit into every space I hadn't realized was empty. We moved together, finding a rhythm that made the chair creak beneath us. His hands grasped my hips, letting me take control, making me feel wanted and in command all at once. With every motion, the tension wound tighter, the sounds of our breathing blending with soft gasps and whispers. I was lost in it, in him, in the feeling of being completely consumed. "That's it," he whispered, voice strained. "Let go for me." And I did. The climax hit in waves, my body shaking as I collapsed into him. Moments later, he followed, groaning my name like a prayer, his arms locking around me. We stayed like that for what felt like ages, breathless, hearts pounding, shadows deepening around us. Eventually, I raised my head to meet his gaze. His hair was tousled, his eyes still dark with desire, but there was a gentleness there too, something unspoken that made my chest ache. "The reports," I whispered, glancing at the chaos on the desk. "Tomorrow," he replied, brushing his hand along my back. Some things matter more than numbers. Still, as I melted into his embrace, reality was already beginning to return. My husband would be home soon, expecting me to return from what he believed was just another standard business appointment. The weight of my wedding band felt heavier than usual, a silent, golden witness to the line I had just crossed. "I should leave," I whispered, though I didn't move from Grant's arms. "I know," he murmured, but his grip remained firm. "Just not yet." We kissed again, slower this time, taking in the taste of the moment before reality could push its way in. When we finally pulled apart, slipping our clothes back on felt like donning armor, returning to identities that no longer felt like they fit. He walked me to the parking garage, his hand resting gently at the small of my back. At my car, he turned me toward him, lifting my chin with tender fingers. "This doesn't have to be goodbye," he said softly. "Your finances will need ongoing attention." I couldn't help the smile that tugged at my lips. "Is that your official recommendation?" "Among others," he said with a grin. His thumb traced along my bottom lip, and I had to stop myself from leaning into him again. The drive home was a blur, flashing city lights and a whirlwind of thoughts. What had I done? What did it mean? And most importantly, what came next? When I got home, my husband was in his office, completely absorbed in work. He barely acknowledged me when I kissed his cheek, muttering something about leftovers in the fridge. Standing in our bedroom, I began peeling off the clothes that still carried Grant's scent. In the mirror, I caught my reflection, flushed skin, lips still swollen from his kiss. I looked like a woman who had been wanted, truly, deeply desired, and I felt it in every fiber of my being. The next morning came like any other, coffee, quiet and routine. But nothing felt the same. When my husband casually mentioned scheduling another meeting with the accountant, my heart skipped. "I could handle that," I said, trying to sound offhand. "No point in both of us going." He nodded without much thought, and I felt a surge of excitement, laced with guilt. My once carefully structured life had shifted, and I wasn't sure I wanted to balance it again. My phone buzzed. A message from Grant. "Found a few more items that need your review. When can we meet again?" I stared at the screen, fingers hovering above the reply. This was the moment. I could say no. I could choose safety and predictability, but the memory of his hands, his mouth, the way I came alive in his presence, my answer was already formed in my heart. "Tonight. Same time." I typed, then hit send. The rest of the day dragged like molasses. Every hour stretched into a lifetime. I caught myself checking mirrors, touching my lips, playing each moment from the night before in my mind on repeat. When evening arrived, I told my husband I needed to go over final reports with Grant. He barely acknowledged me, too distracted by his own world to notice the extra time I'd spent getting ready, the slight tremble in my fingers as I picked up my purse. Grant was waiting. The second I stepped through his office door, the atmosphere shifted. There were no spreadsheets tonight, no small talk, only heat, drawn tight between us. We collided like gravity pulling us together, eager hands, fevered mouths. "I couldn't stop thinking about you today," he breathed into my ear, his hands sweeping down the curves of my dress. "Then show me," I whispered, already undone. This time, he guided me to the couch tucked in the corner, lowering me onto it with a reverence that sent chills through me. His movements were slower, more intentional, worshipping every inch of me as he undressed me with both hands and lips. When our bodies finally came together again, it was deeper, slower, more intense than before. Like dancers who had found their rhythm. Every motion fed the fire between us, every gasp and moan sinking like music we'd composed ourselves. The second time was even better than the first, less frantic, more exploratory. We learned each other's reactions, discovered the places and touches that drew shudders and breathless cries. Lying there afterward, tangled together on his couch, I felt changed in a way that couldn't be undone. "What are we even doing?" I asked, trailing my fingers along the firm lines of his chest. "Living," he said simply, maybe for the first time in a while. And he was right. With him, I didn't feel invisible. I felt real, desired, alive. But I also knew this could never be simple. It was dangerous, and it could destroy everything. "My husband," I started, but Grant pressed a finger gently to my lips. "He's lucky," he said. "But he doesn't need to know how lucky." The drive back was harder this time. Guilt sat heavy on one shoulder. Satisfaction warmed the other. I knew I was tempting fate, but I'd forgotten how thrilling it was to stand that close to the edge and not back away. In the weeks that followed, our business meetings became a regular occurrence. With every rendezvous, we grew bolder, more inventive, more reckless, more addicted. Grant showed me sides of myself I hadn't seen in years. In his arms, I wasn't just someone's wife. I was a woman who craved, who took, who lived. He made me feel radiant, wanted, and powerful. But with every secret came more risk. Moments where I nearly slipped up when my husband asked about the numbers. Times I almost repeated something Grant had told me. The danger only seemed to fuel the intensity. One night, while lying together on the couch, Grant traced soft circles along my shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what this could be if the situation were different?" I did, more often than I'd admit, but thinking it meant confronting the truth, that I wasn't satisfied with the life I had, that I was craving these stolen hours not as a distraction, but as a need. "What would you want it to be?" I asked instead. "Everything," he said, without hesitation. The word settled in the room like a weight, full of dreams and dread. Everything meant walking away from the life I'd built. It meant throwing stability to the wind. It meant risking it all for passion, for connection, for something real. Driving home that night, the road ahead looked different. Grant hadn't just balanced our books, he'd realigned something inside me. Reminded me of what it meant to feel again. To want. To live. In the rearview mirror, I didn't see the same woman who had walked into his office weeks ago. I saw someone revived, eyes bright with possibility, lips curved in quiet defiance. And the question wasn't whether my husband would ever know. The question was I brave enough to stop hiding from the life I truly wanted? Some risks are worth it. Some balances are meant to break. For the first time, I understood. Not every equation leads to security. Some are meant to lead to freedom. So, what would you have done in my place? When passion stands toe-to-toe with responsibility, when longing dares duty to flinch, how do you decide? Tell me in the comments. I read them all, and I want to know your truth. Before you go, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It's quick, it's free, and it makes sure you're here for the next story. Turn on that bell, so you're the first to hear what happens next. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.